It was less about a particular story and more about representation. I was super interested in creating an urban story because I feel like Melbourne doesn't have this sort of show. We live in one of the most multicultural cities in the world, and I don't think that's been explored enough.
I really wanted to be a part of that, to do this love letter to the inner north, which is where I've lived for most of my adult life, and capture that moment before it changes, because it is changing. We're seeing a lot of these beautiful migrant communities being forced out or being pushed out, and I thought this show was really capturing that and presenting that bind.
We shot mainly on Sydney Road and the suburbs of Coburg, Brunswick and Preston. I think that's the best representation of my Melbourne, where I've spent, pretty much my entire life. I lived on Swift Street when I started writing it.
Initially reading the script, it already felt very different, felt very raw and like a real human's life.
Tig's initial pitch to me was basically the opening scene.
Robert! Deal with your own for once, because I'm so out!
The father and daughter, the conflict, this incredibly kind of dynamic and confronting scene, I just was hooked straight away. What is so interesting about that is really it's exploring relationships between parents and their adult children, which is just so relatable and so universal.
I think it's important that we don't just represent Black people on screen as either people that really need help or people that are just excelling. There's a definite middle ground. Look and Tone was about showing a gritty world without having to pity the people that live in this gritty world, that survive in this gritty world, that thrive in this gritty world.
Tig has opened a window into a world that we might not think of as Australia. We might not think of it as Melbourne. It's really colourful and textured and bright, and it's a lot about survival, Survival is hard, but in the way that Tig's framed the world, it can also be fun, it can also be exciting. All of the design elements speak to the houses and the cars, the streets and the alleys, the things that might not make it into the glossy magazine, but there's a rich world there.
The Swift house is based on a house I used to live in that was falling apart, but had so much history. I really wanted to have half wallpapered walls that Robert had started but never finished. I really wanted Elsie to not have a classic bedroom, but to have taken over the lounge room and made that her own space.
Ben Bengay, our designer, he jumped on board very early on. Tig is incredibly visual himself, so he had already kind of started that process, and then Ben was able to translate that into designs and sketches and really bring it to life.
The Swift Street house was just a box. We had to change kind of everything, and we had to build up layers and layers and layers of people, having lived there many times.
The house was amazing. I've never been on a set that felt like so human. It truly felt like Elsie and Robert coexisted in this little rundown house. It just was very special.
From the camera movement to the music, there's always intimacy and movement and pace and energy in the show. Sherwin Akpazade, our DOP, has a great cinematic eye, and he worked really well with Tig to create beautiful, intimate looks.
Working with Sherwin, who also lives exactly where Swift is based, gets it. And that was really important, to have the person that is lensing Swift Street to understand the world and not tokenize the world and empathize with it. Sherwin was all over that.
It was so wonderful to be able to surround him with a very experienced team of heads of department who really got caught up in his vision and his excitement for what was to come.
We leaned a lot into a creative process of how would these kids put together their outfits, if they're op shopping, how are they curating all their wardrobes, because they're really creative and funky, but not necessarily a money thing.
It's been a project where a lot of people have really embraced it with a huge amount of generosity.
It's a celebration of youth in a way, because they give me great hope for the future, that these young people are just so filled with creativity and just life. They know what they're doing and they know how to do it.
Audiences are going to love the pace, the freshness and energy of Swift Street that is almost always underscored by humour.
I'm so personally excited to see all these different shades of black and brown on screen. It's going to be gorgeous.
I think audiences will initially love the sheer energy and punkness and crazy ride that Swift Street offers. It starts at high speed and then it doesn't let up. It's also just got that great sort of hustle, the hustle of life that makes it really an adrenaline-fueled sort of ride to a surprising end.
You screwed up. You're supposed to wash the money, not lose the lot.
Yeah, I know.
I'm collecting the 26,000, Robert.